My name is Barbara Garrity Blake.
Okay.
It is May 24th, 2016, and I am in Sneed's Ferry at New River Nets speaking to the owner, Mr. Melvin Shepard, and this is the Fisheries Reform Act project. So thank you, Mel. You are the very first person to be interviewed for this project.
Okay. Now, this doesn't go on that because I've got it written out. From time to time, somebody says to me, "Who are you?" That's what I give them every time.
Okay, great. That's very nice background information. But for for posterity, I will say that Melvin is a unique individual because he has one foot firmly in the commercial fishing industry with his business and the other foot firmly into conservation and environmental issues, and has been a board member for many, many years with the North Carolina Coastal Federation. So we are very excited to have this opportunity to talk to you, and you have been involved with management and politics your whole career, haven't you?
Yeah. Now, the one thing I want to say is that never have I ever not been an advocate for anybody fishing, recreationally or otherwise, because I think that's a privilege we all ought to have. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Mel, can you just tell us, are you from Sneed's Ferry?
Yeah. I was born in James Walker Memorial in Wilmington. My parents were in Holly Ridge because Holly Ridge used to be almost nothing more than the Shepard farm. My granddaddy was the Atlantic Coastline station master. My grandmother, Hannah Missouri Edens, was the postmistress and ran a store there for many, many years. And the farm was on the side of the road that the fire department is, and plus went all the way out toward the wildlife preserve. Marine Corps just took the last of the farm behind the swamp in this last time they took everything. Before that, the Army had taken it, the farm, and when Camp Davis opened up there. Tilly, I'm not sure exactly where she was born, but her parents and she lived 2 doors from here when she was a child, and I lived about a half a mile through the woods that way, and we grew up together. Okay, been married since 1955. So, yeah, and this has been very, very special to me. Okay?
Mm-hmm. So can you tell me how, when did you get into this business, and how did you come to, first of all, for the listeners, tell us what your business is.
Okay. We have the biggest marine supply business in North Carolina now. We import foul weather gear and shoes from Portugal, and we have dealers from Kodiak to Key West and almost every state. Tilly, Brian, and I started this, my son Brian, in '80. This is our 37th year here.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been involved. Now, trying to make everything short, when I got out of the Navy, I was in Korea, October the 11th, 55. In the 17th of October, I was in Atlanta working for a finance company because I had that job was waiting. I went up through the ranks there, even went up to as far as with CIT Financial, I owned up their personal loan operation in Puerto Rico, and then when we left them, I was supervising Kentucky and Tennessee loan operation, and they were talking to me about going to New York. Tilly had 4 children, and I saw them late Friday or early Saturday, back gone again Monday. Not a really good life. And the job I might have been headed for was a regional supervisor, which meant I'd probably get home once a month or something. Those marriages didn't last real well. Came home from the road one day, and Tilly said, "Melvin, let's go back to North Carolina." I said, "You got it, baby." And so we came back to North Carolina, no job, no nothing, and 4 kids. So we hit the river, something that we had grown up with, and started fishing and oystering and that kind of thing, until she got a job with I got a job first with the Camp Lejeune Fire Department, and she got a job with the post office. I retired as a fire captain at Camp Lejeune while we had this beginning in 10 years, because everything begins really slow. So I was taking nothing out of here and just living off, and Brian was running it and living every day. And then Tilly retired. I retired in 90 from the fire department, and she retired shortly thereafter so we both had those retirements.
When you say hit the river, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about we bought a boat, and she and I fished 1,600 yards of flounder net every single solitary day.
Which river?
New River. Okay. And then during the winter, during the fall, we would fish the ocean for mullets. And what I think has something to do with what has happened is the change when she and I were fishing in the early 70s in the ocean for mullets. Coca-Cola had a Bertram down here it was their fun boat. And their captain would say to us in the morning as we were gassing up, "Melvin, if you'll keep an eye out for me, I'll keep an eye out for you." We were about the only 2 people you'd see all day long in the ocean, from Swansboro to Cape Fear. Change now? You bet you.
What do you mean Coca-Cola had a fun boat?
They owned that boat.
For pleasure?
For pleasure only.
Okay.
And they had a guy locally hired that ran it for them, But what I use that to say is that the competition for fishing, particularly in the ocean, was really, really low. Almost didn't exist. Fiberglass boats in this area that were capable of going in the ocean were very, very low.
So where were the fishermen fishing then?
Mostly inside. Some of them had boats that would set nets off the beach and come back in. Then they go back and harvest those, but not so many, because you had to be able to take a sea, And even the commercial fishermen began to grow outside as they began to get something they could travel safely in. Okay.
So, Melvin, can you describe your relationship with the fisheries environment?
I was president of North Carolina Coastal Federation for 20 years. I have worked all that time in trying to head off things that did bad to the water of the fishermen, because it doesn't exist when there's not proper environment. And in that note, it'll tell you that I was TARPAM, that group. I worked with them. I was on the North Carolina Ocean Resources Task Force. So this is something that's been near and dear to me forever.
What were some of the indicators that you felt were harming the fisheries environment or the water quality?
Well, when I began to see the building that were coming on the shorelines, you begin to suspect that stormwater runoff, particularly and so when we would go under fisheries guidance to New Hanover County, which had the greatest growth first, to get clams particularly out of their polluted waters At that time, because of growth on the shoreline, there was not one single creek in New Hanover County that wasn't polluted. And we would go down and collect clams by the hundreds of thousands and bring them back to Onslow County, put them overboard, give them 30 days, and then you could go get them. But that was a proof positive that this is not good. Since that time, they've been working hard, and it's been really hard for the people who live on the shores to stomach the fact that they build in there expecting to have everything at their fingertips, and they can't eat it. They can't touch it. It was easy to see what was happening. So then, when we started making objections to developments and asking for setbacks and that kind of thing, and then I spent 12 years with the North Carolina Coastal Resources Commission, doing exactly that, trying to write the rules for development and for use of waters. And all this has been just like my life. Yeah. You know.
Oh yeah. and we're all fortunate for that. So getting to the Fisheries Reform Act, can you tell us what your involvement was early on in that process?
Okay. I don't remember even the people that were there, except I remember that the chairman was an attorney from Smithfield.
Bob Lucas.
Bob Lucas. I had never seen Bob before, and I suspect even to this day that politically the people that were trying to get rid of the fishermen in the river had gotten this guy's chairman, because I believe even today that the Fisheries Reform Act was brought about by objection to all these guys catching all our fish that we want to catch recreationally.
So, you think that's why this whole movement started?
Well, at the very outset, there was an effort to remove all inside fishing with nets and trolling. Voted down because we were pretty evenly divided. Somebody did a real good job of saying, I want these people, I want these people, I want these people.
Wait, when you say voted down by who?
By the members of the Fisheries Reform Act.
Okay, so now we're talking about the Moratorium Steering Committee?
Yes.
So you were a member of the Moratorium Steering Committee, yes.
Yes. Right away, there have always been commercial fishermen that resented the recreational guys. It's been, and so somebody said, well, what about all these recreational fishing nets? And so we came up with a compromise that created what you see now, a recreational commercial license. The guy have one net. That's all he wanted, because if that's what he wanted, he could turn in his old license and buy it. And we thought that would be something that the public would like. We wouldn't have any repercussions and would answer some of these things that people wanted to happen. It turned out to be accepted just right offhand by the public. There was about 20, seemed like 25 commercial licenses, and they had to buy a full-fledged commercial license to fish one net. And that particular group, I think of them as farmers from Pender County and Warsaw and Beautiful, who came down with a net in the fall of the year to spot fish. And they didn't care about anything else, just some spots. And that went over really well.
Did you have a positive experience in that process and being a member of the Moratorium Steering Committee?
I did have a positive experience because the balance on the committee was so well that things that were like the getting rid of inside fishing, something that was really not good, could be voted right down. I don't know why, but I was put on the Habitat Committee as chairman of the Habitat Committee, and I made sure that our members, we met separately from the Moratorium Steering Committee, and I made sure that I kept track of these dates and never let these guys be excluded from this Moratorium Steering Committee meeting. We weren't going to lose any votes on the big picture, right? Oh, and everybody signed in for all the things that needed to be done for the environment, and that's what you saw passed. Even North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission gave us an award for that process.
So what was your specific contribution from that committee to the outcome?
I think I had a great deal to do with not getting rid of all the fishermen. I think I had a great deal to do, because my mother was working constantly, for the recreational license that we now have. And I think I had a guy from, I can't remember his name now, that ran a fish house in Ocracoke as vice chairman on the Habitat Committee.
Was it Murray Fulcher?
He sure was. And I think Murray's dead now. And we all had great agreements. There was almost no fussing about any particular thing unless it was completely all in left field. And it was voted through, and we had great attendance from anybody that was interested in environmental issues. They were there chiming in, giving us their feedback. And frankly, there were some things said and put into the minutes that I didn't even think of. You know, we had really good feedback, and that's, I guess that's the reason Wildlife gave us that award, because we had a good piece of paper there.
So refresh my memory, Mel, because I'm a little fuzzy here, but was the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan a direct result from...
That's the thing we wrote.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
And didn't the Coastal Federation have a hand in helping organize meetings for that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
but they weren't out front. Mm-hmm. They were in there pushing, because Todd and I were really great friends, right? And like I say, I was the president for 20 years. So, yeah, they had a good input. The Pamlico people had good input. The people that were working with the hog farms had good input.
The river keepers.
And so we had really, really good people pushing what got written. And what surprised us so much is that Gene Preston and who's a buddy that I was representing.
Was it Redwine?
David Redwine grabbed them and put them in the bill form, and here they went. I mean, it was a done deal. And I think that the rest of it went through because there was a compromise made in the licensing. And we made some glaring errors that went through, and this is something that the people that did the party boats and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. I did my best to keep them from having a commercial license. Didn't work. They were part of this group that wanted to get rid of all inside fishing, but they also wanted to be party boats outside and inside. And as long as there were commercial fishermen, they wanted a commercial license so they could sell. And so what happened as a result of that, all the efforts for recreational catch size, which has something to do with the ability of the resource to stay level, when they go fishing outside or inside, if they catch more than the recreational catch, the dealer takes it and sells it as commercial catch. It's the damnedest loophole you've ever seen.
Interesting. Well, how about the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan today? Do you feel like that plan has made a difference in the water quality?
I think it has, and what I'm seeing right now is that we have Onslow counties where I live, they are really concerned about the water quality around Sneads Ferry, and I'm seeing what I think is a good statewide appreciation of the water, most places. Now, I'm afraid of what happens going ahead when this present General Assembly abolished a tremendous number of the rules that CRC wrote. So I don't know what's behind those. And there still exist the Rules Review Commission that if the CRC now writes a rule and 3 people object, it doesn't go through.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It goes to the Rules Review Commission, which means then it doesn't become any rule unless the General Assembly passes it as a law. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a real brick.
Right.
But so far, things are doing pretty well. I think the common, everyday, ordinary person that lives around the river now is more aware than they have ever been. I give Coastal Federation credit for going to these people and trying to help them make rain gardens and all this stuff, and having school children go with them to plant marsh grass and all this stuff, and teaching them about the environment.
How important is water?
Great day. I'd right away say, okay, look at Flint, Michigan. It's the lifeblood of the people that drink it and the things that live in it. It's the life. The federal fishery management plan for shrimp says shrimp cannot be overfished. However, the environment can do away with them, right? Or they won't come to where the environment is going downhill. They come in as a post-larval thing and go high and dry in the marshland right up next to where these homes are. They're the lowest thing on the food chain. Everything is trying to eat them. And then if what's coming off the lawns does its thing, then you have no shrimp. Last year was the biggest shrimp year in North Carolina history, I think. Mm-hmm. And this one is starting off the same way. So that tells me something about what's happening in the edge of the shore. That to me is a yardstick.
Yeah. So thinking back again about when the Fisheries Reform Act was passed, the act wasn't exactly the same as the moratorium recommendations. Were you happy with the Fisheries Reform Act?
I was, because what I thought the purpose of it was to do worse. And I don't think you can get any group together unless there's some kind of compromise. Nothing gets passed without some sort of compromise.
But you're saying that you thought there was an agenda in putting the process in motion that was not friendly to the
to begin with.
But then you were surprised that it was balanced and worked out.
That, I think, is the key to almost anything in our state legislative or anything else. For example, the group that has wanted to get people out of their fishing in their waters, has really had a red drum, wanted to make it state flower and all that stuff, right? Well, they really were hard on flounder nets last year. Well, the truth of the matter is, flounder net is exactly the size to catch a big red drum, precisely the size. So you had to be careful, and you couldn't keep but one or two, according to what time of year it was. Well, the guys that were on the commission at that time, the chairman tells me, voted down any presentation from the not geologists, the research people,
The biologists.
voted down any of the meetings, hearing from any of the meetings of the people involved. That doesn't work. That's not balance. I'll give you the best example I can tell you. The recreational flounder fishery was 15 inches. Commercial was 14. I never agree with that, but that's what it was. The flounder net you could use was 5 3/4 inches recreationally with that 15-inch fish. Okay, they talked the commission and got it voted through that although commercial was going to 15 inches, so what, maybe a 5 3/4 inch net? No, we're going to raise the net by 1/4 of an inch so that they can't have the nets they're using now. Across this state, there was probably $200,000 worth of net expense to recreational and commercial fishermen, just that one item. I can show you on my tax return, I charged off just barely under $50,000 because I had that net here to sell and couldn't sell it in North Carolina. Now, who loses? I'm big enough now that I absorb that like it's nothing. But guess who don't get paid the taxes on it? North Carolina and the federal government. I get both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's dumb. That's dumb as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, the state loses in that case.
So talking about this flounder, it's a little complicated, I think, to get across to the public, but the commission came up with this idea of a supplement, and they, I guess in the end, didn't have to go through the complete process that was set out. So, as a member of the Moratorium Steering Committee and, a developer of the Fisheries Reform Act, what's going on?
It's people on the commission that have an agenda, and when that was voted on, it was not balanced. Now you're not balanced when you're not willing to hear what the biologists have got to say, and you're not willing to hear what there are committees established in each region of the people that are involved in the fisheries. They didn't want to hear them. This is a recognized problem because the Supreme Court just warned the Attorney General in North Carolina and all other states that these commissions that have members that have an agenda to put other people out of business like them, that can't be. And so what you had some people on this commission that wanted to put other people out of business or make it really difficult to make them want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So how do you balance the commission and keep it balanced?
Yes.
See, that requires people who care about other people. That requires people who, if they see a fishery resource, if they're advised that this fishery resource is going downhill by the biologists, and in order to do this, they do it. If they say things are pretty good right now, you can go another year just like you are, and we'll look at it. Then they don't have an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. That is hard. It seems like the commission is like this, And the chairman that's on there right now, Sonny Corbett, is probably as good as there has ever been there. But he can only do so much. He's not a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries his best. And when you call for a vote and you lose the vote, you want to throw up your hands, but he stays there and he tries to do the best he can.
Right, right. If you remember when the Fisheries Reform Act or the Moratorium Steering Committee recommendations went before our legislators in Raleigh, there was a protest launched. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
What? Can you tell us about that? What was that
Well,
about?
I think part of it came out of Jerry Shield. Some of them don't want those kind of rules at all. And then I think there was the CCA had a great protest because this doesn't solve anything. Mm-hmm. This doesn't solve you're still letting the same people fish that fished before.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't listen. I know they're making an attempt now to make people listen again.
Right.
But in my estimation, the fish are as in good a shape as they have ever been. I told you we fish 1,600 yards of flounder net every single solitary day. We probably never had more than 30 flounder in that 1,600 yards. You don't do more than that now. That's not many fish.
Yeah.
And we worked at it. I mean, and of course then we wouldn't fish when they dropped below 50 cents. And now you get about $3 for them when there's not many around. Mm-hmm. But I have those yardsticks I can look back on. And right now, the red drum are a pain for flounder net, for people fishing flounder nets. They're almost as bad as turtles.
Oh, you mean like they're a nuisance?
They're a nuisance because you can't if you got a dead one and you've already got one in the boat dead, and it's a time of year when you're going to have them keep one, and then the other one float off, and somebody sees it, or the man comes to check you, and you got 3 in your net. What do? You get criticized severely.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about the Fisheries Reform Act, Mel, what do you think what part of the act, what changes that were made have been most successful for the state?
Well, I think the one where the guy that had to buy a full-fledged commercial license, and by doing that, he went ahead and bought some other nets and tried to fish more. I think when it fell back, they only had one net. He was tickled to death. I think that's the one thing we did well. Even then, fisheries wanted to get rid of everybody with a license that didn't make at least 40% of their income from fishing. And one thing I argued then and argue still now is, why in the hell would you worry about the people that affect the resource the least? Because, here's what's wrong now. Enforcement is the biggest problem right now. It's terrible. Those guys work like hell. They are restricted often on how much gas they can put in their truck or how much gas they can put in. Some guys tell me they have put their nets out for a year and never see an enforcement officer. He can't be in every creek and at every dock. He just can't be. And the other thing is oysters. That's the fishery that's in a crisis. Those things are worth about $75 a bushel. And when the guys come in here and buy oystering equipment and gloves, well over half of them have no license. You can't catch him. He can't be everywhere. And the one thing we've said is, okay, we want to let people live in this state be able to at least have a bushel of oysters to eat. See, that's a great goal. But the people that use it to go and bring it to the dock, go get another one and bring it to the dock.
Oh, I see.
I mean, it's abused like crazy. So why don't you support the fisheries by everybody having to have a license if you've got it in your boat? You gotta. The only people that are required to put anything back are the people that own a lease. And they keep track of them. You've got to put X number of bushels, shells, or this kind of stuff back. Otherwise, the people that we want to have a bushel of oysters never ever put anything back. Right? They take. There's more of them and more of them and more of them and more of them.
So
We've got to. I'm going to leave it alone after I say this.
Yeah.
We have got to support fisheries enforcement. That's got to happen. Otherwise, no rule is worth 2 cents. They accidentally catch somebody now and then violating something. But they work hard. I would hate for one of them to hear me say this and misunderstand me. They work like crazy. But let me give you some example. We sell to the division. Do you know who they send by here to pick up the packages of boots and gloves and stuff for fisheries? An enforcement officer. They put him in his truck and drive him here to pick it up, and he takes it to the. That's not much enforcement for that boy that day.
yeah.
I mean, they're using for something else.
Yeah, I see.
To me, it's a tragedy that will never ever keep the resource protected like it ought to be.
Yeah. Do you think that's a budget question?
Hell yes. The money coming to support them has to come from someplace. There are licenses that we ought to be writing, and the General Assembly, because what happens right now is we keep writing rules, like that flounder rule, to solve the problem of that we see with the resource, because we haven't been able to do what the last rules we wrote said. So we keep writing a rule to make it tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher, and none of them get enforced. We just keep writing rules. We look really, really good on the books, and it's not worth a tinker's damn.
Well, that brings up my next question, because there are emerging issues that we face today: climate change, the onslaught of imported products that has really transformed our industry, the emphasis on ecosystem-based management. So, do you think the Fisheries Reform Act, as written, can in any way accommodate those issues so we can continue to manage our fisheries well, or do you think it needs to be changed or tweaked?
The answer is we need to say, we're taking this Fisheries Reform Act that we love, and we're going to take it to the table, and we're going to rework this boy. Because then we didn't know all we know now. Right? And these problems that we have seen crop up, we're going to try to solve them while we're doing that. And if we'll put a balanced group together It may not come out perfect, but it will come out pretty good. You know, early in life, I didn't compromise on a damn thing because I was a supervisor on a finance company. If I caught you stealing, you were gone. There was no second chance, right? And I'd catch people, for example, a loan that the insurance company had paid. They were 30 days old, and I go look at it, and the guy was dead before the office manager wrote the loan. And he wrote it on this guy that he'd read the obituary in the paper. It was on the books. Everything was okay. And then 30 days later, filed for the insurance to pay off the loan. There's always somebody somewhere cheating, you know. And then fisheries, there are a tremendous number, Barbara, of cheaters.
But you started off to say that compromise, you were talking about compromise.
If there may be something that, let's say there's 15 of us, that each 15 of us have, by golly, I'm going to get this in there, and the other 14 won't buy it. So this little agenda I've got may be crumble, but if I can agree with what everything else comes out, I'm going to vote for the final thing. Right? That's compromising sometimes. And I don't know how you get away from that.
So, what, if anything, should be changed to ensure a healthy fisheries environment?
Just the enforcement. And some of the things I brought up to you about, for example, I mentioned the thing I think and I brought it up and they wouldn't buy it, where we've got a guy with a commercial license that's taking people out recreational fishing. That's an error. Now, it's real easy to write it, so he's got to register this trip in advance. He's got to notify fisheries that he's got a charter at such and such a date. And when he comes back to the dock, they meet him there. And he better not have over a recreational limit for each of these people. Now, I saw some of the stuff being unloaded one day in Moratorium City, and they had one hell of a day in the grouper. And the guy was taking them in carts from the fish house right over there and put them in the carts. And they weren't taking, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. These were all from the boat, right? Things like that could be solved pretty easily. A lot of the people that sell clams now buy from anybody. Okay? Suppose those books had the balance. Suppose what I sell has the balance with what I took in. Plus, we have a system where all this is supposed to go through the catch registration, right? Fish and everything else. That ought to balance some way.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I think things can be handled easier. There are probably some different ways to write rules, and we ought to take a look at the ones we've got and say, look, we are crazy as the devil. This is simply done this way. Because there are some things these guys have to do that even they don't agree with.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
But I think that anything that's that old, 94, we didn't have the whole picture in our mind that we've got now. And I think somebody needs to pick that up. And they ought to ignore the people with an agenda to get rid of a group of people and say, okay, let's get together for the common good with a well-balanced group. Have some of those people in it, right? And then let's come up with the very best product we can come up with. And there might even be a habitat committee come out of that. and see some things that we've seen that we missed. You know, the oyster thing, I've been living with now for about 6 years, because every year we go to Ocean City, Maryland, and across from us is the University of Maryland Oyster Recovery Program. And all the things that they're doing to recover oysters in the Chesapeake Bay, where they have been so depleted. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Mel, these are pretty much all my questions. Is there anything you would like to add?
I probably wrote a couple of things in here. Can you read it if I just tear it out and let you either throw it away or read it?
Sure.
And I may have recovered these.
Yeah.
But for example, I think you knew me already, Barbara. But I think that something like the commission, we have got to get people on that. Maybe they don't know so much.
Who do you consider your stakeholder group?
I would consider the stakeholder group to be the ones right around me right here now in Sneads Ferry.
Uh-huh.
Because I see them, I work with them, I get a chance to talk with them.
And so who are they? I mean, what do they do?
They net fish, they fish in the ocean, they crab, they clam, they run trawlers.
Okay, so you're considering yourself as part of the commercial fishing stakeholder group?
No. In this business, I've got the biggest group of people, particularly Wilmington, that comes up here to buy lead, that comes up here to buy rings, anchor ball rings so they can recover their anchor in the ocean. And those are people that are of that caliber of fishing, right? That's recreational fishing. I buy about a ton of lead a month, and the people in Wilmington that fish offshore buy most of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the people, almost with very few exceptions, the people that come in here, I feel a great kinship to after 37 years. And in that group, let's say, Barbara, there's 15% of them that I consider thieves and crooks. Because God didn't write anything that they can abide by. You know, the only thing they're doing is just, if you write a rule, they're looking for a way to get around it. And hence my push for enforcement. Because I believe that if a guy didn't give me a ticket for going 80, I might drive 80 a lot of times when I'm in a hurry.
I guess what I was getting at, Mel, is like in your career of participating, you've been quite a participator in management processes. Do you consider yourself more an environmentalist, an environmental advocate, or a fisherman and fishing advocate, or do you see a combination of all these things?
If I had to give it a percentage, I'd say I'm 80% an environmentalist, because all of this other hinges around it. I mean, it's such a deadly connection to it. You know, it just is. Mm-hmm. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned when the guys, like that last thing that came out of the commission, cost them every net that they had. It cost them $285 to replace it. And it was, how many people do they have licensed in the state? 2,000? I'll guarantee you every one of them had a flounder net that he had to throw away or replace the webbing in. See, those things are wrong. Unless that's the right thing to do. And I can show them on paper it's not. The 15-inch flounder was okay in a 5 3/4 inch net until you decided you wanted to go to 6-inch on the same flounder. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Do you think that our leaders in Raleigh understand the importance of clean water quality to the coastal folks?
Barbara, I really don't. I have very little confidence in the group that's in Raleigh right now because I feel like that our governor right now, that Duke Power and the coal ash ponds still have him in their pocket. I mean, when he made an effort to get the Division of Coastal Management, whatever it was, Environmental Management, to back off on their rules, and the court says no. The court says they got to do it now. Okay, let's put it off for years. You know, that I think that I would like for everybody to have a job. But just like when we were working against that cement plant in the Cape Fear River.
Oh, Titan.
They were holding up, think of all these people we're going to hire. Hiring somebody does not replace destruction of the environment. I mean, that's a poor excuse and unacceptable as far as I'm concerned, because I really do believe that we can do things the right way. I think we're capable of doing that. Now, maybe a guy that's developing, he can only put 8 houses where he wanted to put 10. Come on, join us. Be part of the caring world here, you know. So yeah, then I consider myself more of an environmentalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mel.
Listen.
You know, unless you have something else you want to add, that's all.
The reason I told you you're the only person that I've let come down and sit down and interview with me. Wow. Because of what you and I just talked about, right? You're dealing with something that's really, really, really important, not something that you want to gain a newspaper article one day about, right?
Right.
Maybe you can't take it very far, but hopefully you can. Hopefully you can. And then I'll tell you right now, I'm with you all the way. You got me. Always have had. You know that.
Well, thank you so much, Mel. I appreciate it. I'll turn this off.
Yeah.